What's up, everybody? We're on a podcast now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about this Lord of the Rings rumor. Quite good, quite exciting, and hopefully it's real at the end of the day. We'll look at the rumor in a second, but as part of the rumor, it even talks about maybe in the next week or so, it becomes like signed in ink officially, maybe behind the scenes. I do wonder how long it's going to take until we eventually see it. Well, there might be a detail or two in this rumor that gives us a little hint to that as well. So let's go into it. It comes from Insider Gaming. Now, like Tom Henderson, who runs Insider Gaming, one of the all-time great insiders. This doesn't come from him, but it does come from his website. So I'm still going to hold it in higher regard than like the average rumor, but it's not perfect, right? It's not like it's something I am going to 1,000% believe. Ultimately, I guess I'll believe it when I see it. So they say exclusive, a new Lord of the Rings game is in development. They say the funding of it should equate to roughly $100 million, give or take. The deal has been in the works since last year, and while not signed yet due to the number of moving parts, it is said to be made official soon and could happen as early as next week. Regarding current funding of the game's development, it has been funded internally. As far as what the game will be, sources didn't want to say too much. What was said, however, is that it'll be a third-person action game that is designed in a way to compete with Hogwarts Legacy. And then it's being funded by this Abu Dhabi investment office, but they also say there's other parties involved, including Embracer, Revenge, and other studios. Embracer has the rights for Lord of the Rings for video games since 2022, when it paid $400 million to get that. It's since licensed out those rights to other companies to produce titles, including, of course, Lord of the Rings Gollum. And then Embracer, of course, set a general rule: we do not comment on rumors or speculation. So look, first thing I'll say is this wouldn't be surprising for a couple different reasons, right? There's maybe some obvious ones, but in one way, well, yeah, they have the rights. You're going to want to use them. Number two, they've given out the rights before. It hasn't worked so well. So I think one thing, you could throw more money at it, right? That's kind of what I'm dancing around. Not that throwing more money at it is always a good thing. In fact, oftentimes it could be a very bad thing. But what we had kind of found out with like Lord of the Rings Gollum is that it was people that weren't ready. It was people that were very inexperienced. It did not really have a budget. It didn't really have a lot of things. And that's not how you do it. Now, maybe a $100 million thing isn't exactly how you do it either. But, to be fair, okay, $100 million, if that would, say, be the budget of the entire game, you look at something like Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotei, the reported budgets are like 60, 70 million, right? Yes, the Spider-Mans and some of the bigger, AAA, Xbox, PlayStation, these games, they can get 200 plus million, but 100 million it's a really solid number. It is not the most in the world. Of course, it's not nothing, but it's a good amount of money. You can make, I'd say, a very impactful AAA game for $100 million, at least if you spend it right. So, a lot of that kind of checks out. Again, like the idea of, well, them wanting to use the property that they have. And this competing with Hogwarts thing, that probably is what sets it over the top, or is that the right phrase? It really is probably what makes it for me, because you look at what Hogwarts did, and I think, you stick in the WB family, by the way. Game of Thrones could use something just like Hogwarts Legacy. Lord of the Rings could use something just like Hogwarts Legacy. It feels like a no-brainer. One big thing, of course, in terms of this jealousy and wanting to do it, because of Hogwarts, is probably like reinvigorating property in terms of gaming. You look at Hogwarts sells 20, 25 million units. You'd think you'd be drooling, if you're these other, and that, again, that is probably that's definitely what I mean, but it's also, I would assume that's what they're thinking when they see Hogwarts. If you have a franchise that you think you can do something even remotely close to it, right? A 20, 25 hour, trying to be kind of as respectful as possible to the brand and to the lore, but kind of do your own thing, but doing it like that. And not to say Hogwarts is perfect by any means, but it did a lot of things right, and it kind of checked a lot of boxes for what it needed to be, to make it so successful. That's what Game of Thrones needs. That's what Lord of the Rings needs. And so in that way, I think it is a no-brainer. Now, of course, they talk about it seemingly just started last year, and maybe it was internally funded up until this point. Now they're about to get $100 million, so now it really takes off. Now, I guess what you could say about that is, like, this is a while. If that all of that stuff is true, you can probably right off the last year, loosely. Like, and I guess what I mean by that is if you want to start like a 5-year counter, I would personally start it now. You could start it last year, so you could say 4 years from now. I would start it at 5 because I feel like 50-50 for some of these studios. Sometimes they'll tinker away at a game and call it pre-production or call it whatever they want. And really, they might get somewhere internally, but it doesn't move the timeline, right? They could take a year and you would say, okay, well, 4 more years, but really it could also still be 5. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is I will take the under. I will take the assumption that they're tinkering, they're figuring it out, all good stuff, all stuff you want them to do, of course, but I'm not going to subtract that from the length. I think it's still going to take, another 5+ years in order for this game to come out. So, it's exciting because I think it needs something like this. Also, we haven't had something like this in a little while. Now, here's the deal. It wouldn't have the Nemesis system. You think about Middle Earth, and like they did it so well. And I mean, the second one, had some mixed results with microtransactions and stuff, but overall, extremely, extremely good games. This is not WB. This is Embracer, right? So you can't do the Nemesis system. It wouldn't be like that. I really think, like I said earlier, in terms of, okay, well, if it's competing with Hogwarts, I think it's something in like the, having the free flow type movement, which Shadow did as well, to be honest with you. But then also, again, maybe sticking with that lore, like Hogwarts relied very heavily on the castle and then kind of did its own thing kind of outside the castle. Maybe Lord of the Rings sticks with a movie or a book or whatever, and kind of stays close, but then kind of expands and does its own thing. That's kind of how I would, if you're competing with it. Obviously, you have kind of like the mold of what Hogwarts is in your head, and you want to try to achieve that with Lord of the Rings. But super exciting. Like, that's something I want. I think a lot of people deserve it. I think a lot of people have been asking for that before Hogwarts Legacy, to be honest. I think people have wanted it. Game of Thrones, too, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of franchises that deserve that kind of treatment. So we'll keep an eye on it. Hey, maybe the next couple of weeks we get an announcement, but I don't know if I need an announcement if the game is 5 years away. So it might be a long-term project. I'll try to still be around YouTube when this game comes out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.